Captain Alara Voss adjusted the straps of her suit and stared at the holographic map floating before her. The planet they called the Barren Princess loomed in the distance, a small dot in the blackness of space. According to every recorded observation, it was a dead world. Lifeless plains stretched across its surface. Jagged rocks tore at its thin atmosphere, and storms of dust raged across its empty plains. It had been called the Barren Planet by explorers for centuries, a place where no life could survive, no matter how advanced the technology or strong the species attempting to colonize it. Yet, here she was, the human chosen to step foot on this world, carrying a mission the galaxy considered a joke. The Galactic Council had laughed when they announced her assignment. Send a fragile human to a dead planet? What could possibly go wrong? Commented Ambassador Lavar, a four-armed observer from the high-gravity world of Korath. Other species whispered, chuckling behind their tentacles or through their telepathic networks. Humans were emotional, unpredictable, and impulsive. They lacked the discipline and precision of older, more established species. And yet, a human was chosen. Alara did not let their laughter shake her. She had been trained for this moment her entire life. Her mind was disciplined, her curiosity endless, and her patience unshakable. Unlike many others, she had learned to see what was unseen, to notice patterns where others saw chaos. She had grown up on a planet that demanded ingenuity, Earth, and now, her Earthborn skills were about to be tested on a scale she could not yet imagine. Her ship, the Stellar Echo, slid into orbit above the barren surface. The planet was even more desolate than she had expected. Clouds of dust swirled in uneven patterns, casting long shadows over jagged cliffs and valleys. The faint glint of minerals sparkled here and there. But life, as far as any sensor could detect, was absent. She prepared her descent with careful attention, double-checking the landing sequence. As the ship's thrusters fired, she watched the surface come closer. Each detail was important. Every nuance could hold a secret. The humans had been mocked for centuries for their small size and weak biology. Yet here she had an advantage no one else possessed. A mind willing to explore and experiment, a patience to watch and learn, rather than immediately conquer. The Stellar Echo landed with a gentle hiss. Dust and sand puffed around the landing platform, and Alara stepped down cautiously. The air was thin, almost lifeless, but she could feel the subtle vibrations beneath her boots. Nothing in the galaxy had prepared her for the silence of a world truly alone. Yet, despite the emptiness, she did not feel fear. Instead, a quiet thrill ran through her. This was a challenge, and she loved challenges. As she walked across the cracked plains, her sensors picked up faint anomalies. She paused, crouching beside a jagged stone. Tiny, almost imperceptible pulses of energy radiated from within the mineral. Her human fingers brushed over it lightly. It was not alive in the sense of Earth's plants or animals, but it pulsed with a rhythm that suggested potential. Waiting. A dormant energy. A world sleeping beneath the surface. Alara set up her observation equipment and began to record. The aliens back at the council would call this wasted effort, overthinking, or human folly. But she knew better. The Barren Princess was not lifeless. It was misunderstood. Mislabeled by species who judged too quickly. Every planet had a story. Some simply required patience to uncover it. Days passed. Alara explored carefully, mapping mineral formations, dust patterns, and the faintest hints of energy. At night, she watched small glows flicker across the plains. She crouched in the shadows, observing them, making careful notes. They pulsed and faded, almost like the heartbeat of the planet itself. She whispered to herself, a habit she had grown accustomed to. There's more here than anyone realizes. I just have to find it. Meanwhile, the galaxy continued to mock her. Holo feeds from various species broadcasted live reports of her mission, filled with jokes and ridicule. What's the human doing now? Talking to rocks? Pleasing galaxy. Talking to rocks, they sneered. Alara ignored them. She did not need approval. The truth was in the observation, in the patient understanding of a world no one else wanted to bother with. During her exploration, she noticed something remarkable. Where she had walked, subtle changes began to occur. Dust shifted differently. Minerals shimmered faintly. And in certain patches, faint patterns emerged in the cracks of the soil. No one could explain this but her. She had not done much, only walked, observed, and allowed the planet's energy to respond naturally. Yet, the Barren Princess was subtly, almost imperceptibly, reacting. Alara realized then that this planet required connection, not dominance. The species that mocked her approached the world with tools, weapons, and technologies designed to force life where it could not exist. She understood that their failure was inevitable. Humans did not always rely on brute force. They relied on empathy, creativity, and adaptability, qualities underestimated by all others. As the first week passed, she discovered another anomaly. Small vents along the cliffs exuded faint pulses of heat and light. At first, she thought it was geological, but the patterns were too regular, too deliberate. She sketched them carefully, noting the rhythms. There was intelligence here, ancient and silent, waiting to be understood. Alara spent long nights staring at the stars, thinking. She thought about her home, Earth, and how humanity had survived against countless challenges. They had been underestimated for centuries, yet they had adapted, thrived, and transformed the impossible into reality. She felt a similar potential within this barren planet. The galaxy mocked it, but she saw opportunity. Her reports back to the Council were met with silence or derision. "Captain Voss, we see nothing but dust and rocks," a stern voice said through the communicator. "Perhaps your sensors are malfunctioning." Alara smiled softly. She did not need their recognition. The truth was in the observation, in the patient work she did every day. One night, as she rested near a glowing mineral formation, she noticed something extraordinary. Tiny filaments of light arched between the minerals, creating patterns that resembled constellations. She leaned closer, fascinated. The planet was not dead. It was dormant, waiting for someone who could understand its subtle language. Alara realized that this was the first step. To awaken the Barren Princess, she would not need weapons, machines, or force. She would need patience, empathy, and the creativity unique to humans. It would not be fast, and it would not be easy. But the galaxy had mocked her for believing in the impossible. Soon, she thought quietly, they would see that humans had been underestimated at their own peril. Days turned into weeks, and the subtle changes continued. Dust shifted, minerals shimmered, and faint pulses of energy grew stronger. Alara worked tirelessly, documenting every anomaly, testing theories, and listening to the quiet rhythms of the planet. It responded to her presence, her careful observations, and her willingness to connect rather than conquer. By the end of the month, something remarkable had happened. In the place where she had first landed, tiny sprouts of green began to emerge from the cracked soil. At first, it was only a few strands, fragile and faint. But it was undeniable. Life was stirring where none had existed before. Alara knelt beside the new growth, tears forming in her eyes. The galaxy had mocked her mission, laughed at the humans sent to the barren world. Yet here she was, witnessing the first signs of transformation. The Barren Princess was alive in ways no one else could have imagined. She whispered softly to the plants, to the energy, to the planet itself. "We'll do this together, one step at a time." For the first time, the night sky over the barren plains seemed to shimmer with possibility. The stars reflected the spark of new life, and Alara felt a surge of hope and determination. The galaxy may have mocked her, but she was only beginning. The human approach, slow and thoughtful, patient and observant, had begun to awaken the planet. And in doing so, it had begun to awaken something in herself, the realization that humans were never meant to be underestimated. The journey ahead would be long, and the challenges greater than she could yet imagine. But for the first time, the Barren Princess was no longer a dead world, and the galaxy would soon learn that sometimes the quiet, careful human mind could achieve what the most advanced civilizations deemed impossible. Captain Alara Voss stood on the cracked plains, looking at the tiny sprouts of life, and smiled. She was ready for the next step. The galaxy may have mocked her, but she would prove that humans, with patience, intelligence, and courage, could awaken worlds. And when that happened, the entire galaxy would take notice. Weeks passed on the Barren Princess, and Captain Alara Voss grew more attuned to the planet than she had ever imagined possible. The sprouts she had first discovered were no longer fragile threads of green. They had grown taller, sturdier, and strangely vibrant. Bending slightly as if acknowledging her presence, Alara walked among them, carefully observing, noting how the plants seemed to respond to the subtle changes in her movements, her voice, even her breathing. It was as if the planet itself recognized her. Her sensors continued to reveal faint pulses of energy beneath the surface. At first, she thought they were minor anomalies, natural vibrations from the rocks and minerals. But now, patterns began to emerge. The pulses were regular, deliberate, almost like signals, and they grew stronger each day. They shifted in response to her presence. When she approached a cluster of mineral formations, the energy would ripple outward. When she touched the soil, it seemed to hum with anticipation. Alara realized something extraordinary. The planet was not simply dormant, it was aware. Not in the way of thinking beings, perhaps, but aware in a deeper sense. A responsiveness that had waited, patiently, for someone capable of understanding it. She could feel it, faintly at first, like a soft vibration beneath her skin, then more clearly as she focused. The Barren Princess was alive in ways no sensor could measure. She began experimenting carefully. If she arranged small stones in a pattern, the energy pulses responded with a slight increase in frequency. If she adjusted the angle of a reflective mineral shard to catch the weak sunlight, the pulses became more organized, almost musical. It was as though the planet was learning from her, reacting to her actions with a subtle intelligence. Back on the Galactic network, reports of her mission were still met with ridicule. Captain Voss reports slight soil vibration, a Quarathian commentator said, his forearms waving in disbelief. Perhaps the human is dancing on rocks and calling it progress. Alara ignored them. The galaxy had never understood humans. They were impatient, quick to judge, and slow to see subtlety. She had long since learned that true breakthroughs rarely earned immediate praise. One night, she followed a trail of faint light that stretched across the plains, pulsating gently like a heartbeat. The lights led her to a canyon, one of the few areas of the planet that remained untouched by her explorations. She descended carefully, the ground beneath her boots warm with a strange, low hum. At the base of the canyon, she found a formation of crystalline structures, glowing faintly from within. Their light pulsed in response to her approach, brighter as she neared, dimmer as she stepped back. Alara crouched, fascinated. She touched the nearest crystal lightly, and the pulse shifted rhythm. She hummed a simple tune instinctively, and to her astonishment, the crystal pulsed in harmony with her voice. The canyon was alive. The planet had reserves of energy hidden in places untouched by the wind, untouched by time. She felt a thrill she had never experienced before. Here, in isolation, she was uncovering a secret that no other species had noticed. For the next several days, she studied the canyon. The crystals, she realized, were nodes in a vast network that spanned the planet. By observing, experimenting, and connecting with them in subtle ways, she could influence the energy flows. Small changes at one node affected distant crystals elsewhere. The planet was a living system, dormant but interconnected, waiting for a mind capable of understanding its rhythms. Alara began to design small experiments. She built patterns of reflective minerals around the nodes, directing sunlight into the deepest recesses of the canyon. She used her voice, her touch, and her body's natural resonance to interact with the pulses of energy. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the crystals began to emit light more consistently. Tiny vines began to crawl along their bases, reaching toward the energy, as if awakened by her presence. She documented everything meticulously, knowing that one day, the galaxy would take notice. For now, she worked in silence. Her only companions, the gentle hums of the planet and the flickering lights of the crystalline nodes. Every day, she felt herself growing more attuned, learning not only about the planet but about the kind of human she could be when she relied on patience, observation, and intuition rather than strength or technology. Then came the first anomaly she could not explain. One morning, after a night of experimentation, she discovered that the sprouts she had nurtured were no longer confined to the areas she had tended. Tiny shoots had begun appearing far beyond her observation zones, in places she had never touched or influenced directly. The planet was responding on its own, spreading life where she had merely initiated a signal. Ilara's heart raced. This was unprecedented. No other species had reported such a phenomenon. She realized that by engaging with the planet, she had awakened a process that was self-propagating. The Barren Princess had not been dead. It had been waiting for a compatible mind, one capable of initiating change without imposing force. She had triggered that response. Excited, she shared a cautious report with the Council, sending data streams showing the subtle growth of plant life and the synchronization of energy nodes. The response was mixed. Some species continued to mock her. "The human is imagining life in dust," a Valerian diplomat said. Others, however, began to take notice. Faint ripples of curiosity spread through the galaxy. Perhaps the human had discovered something real. Ilara ignored the skeptics and returned to her work. She discovered that the energy nodes responded not only to light but also to sound. Simple tones she hummed, rhythms she tapped with her fingers on stones. All produced measurable changes in the pulse frequency. The planet was listening, learning, and responding. She could feel the excitement building within herself as she realized the implications. She was not simply studying a planet. She was forming a partnership with it. As she explored further, she encountered strange formations she had not seen before. Metallic veins ran beneath the surface, almost like circuits, pulsing with faint electrical energy. They connected distant nodes in a web spanning miles. The planet's network was vast, ancient, and intricate. She realized that the Barren Princess had once been a thriving world, and some natural event or forgotten cycle had caused it to fall into dormancy. She was not merely a visitor. She was a catalyst for its awakening. At night, Ilara often stared at the stars, reflecting on the irony. The galaxy had mocked her for being human, for being small and fragile. Yet here, on a world dismissed as dead, her species' greatest strengths, curiosity, persistence, adaptability, and empathy, were proving far more effective than brute force or advanced technology. No other species had the patience or the subtlety to engage with a planet in this way. Humans, despite being underestimated, could succeed where others failed. The isolation also gave her time to think about the broader implications. If humans could awaken the Barren Princess, what else could they do? Planets thought dead, systems thought unremarkable. Challenges others considered impossible, humans had the capacity to transform them. That thought excited her, filled her with determination. She was only at the beginning of what could become a galactic legacy. Her experiments began to show increasingly dramatic results. Where she had placed reflective minerals and harmonized energy nodes, small streams of water began to appear, fed by condensation she had not anticipated. The soil softened, cracks closing gradually as tiny roots spread and intertwined. Life, fragile at first, was growing stronger. The hum of energy pulsed more clearly, more consistently. The Barren Princess was no longer silent. Yet, with progress came new challenges. Some nodes resisted synchronization. Some areas of the planet emitted erratic pulses that disrupted her carefully tuned patterns. Ilara faced frustration, but she never gave up. She analyzed the anomalies, adjusted her approach, and experimented patiently. Every failure taught her something new, deepening her understanding of the planet's network and her own human resilience. One morning, she noticed a remarkable phenomenon. The light pulses from distant nodes had begun to coordinate themselves, creating patterns in the sky that mirrored constellations of nearby stars. The planet was learning not only from her but from itself, creating symmetry and order from its previously chaotic dormancy. Elara realized that she was witnessing the birth of a living system, one that combined natural intelligence, human guidance, and planetary memory. She sent another data stream to the Council, careful this time to include photographic evidence of the glowing networks and emerging flora. The galaxy could no longer deny that something remarkable was happening. Skeptics still existed, but curiosity had begun to replace ridicule. Even distant species that had mocked her now whispered among themselves, wondering what the human had discovered. Elara smiled quietly. She did not need recognition, but she understood that the universe was beginning to pay attention. Her mission, once seen as a joke, was becoming a turning point in galactic history. The Barren Princess was no longer barren, and the humans, underestimated for centuries, were demonstrating the quiet power of patience, creativity, and empathy. As the days continued, the planet grew more vibrant. Tiny glowing tendrils of energy weaved between the crystalline nodes, connecting distant points across the plains. Sprouts of new life appeared in greater numbers, forming delicate patterns across the landscape. The faint hum of energy became a symphony, responding to her presence, her voice, and her movements. The Barren Princess was awakening, and Captain Elara Voss was at its center. The galaxy, once filled with laughter at her mission, was beginning to notice. Whispers of amazement traveled from system to system. The human has done what no one else could, one Valerian scientist admitted. It is not the tools or strength of a species that matter, but their understanding and patience. The humans have something the rest of us lack. Elara watched the horizon, the first light of dawn reflecting off the crystalline nodes, and felt a deep satisfaction. She was learning the language of the planet, discovering its hidden potential, and proving that humans, though small and underestimated, could achieve the impossible. The Barren Princess had begun its transformation, and she knew the journey ahead would bring even greater discoveries. Every day revealed a new mystery, a new challenge, and a new opportunity to demonstrate the ingenuity of humanity. The galaxy had mocked her, but she was only beginning to show what a human could accomplish when they refused to give up. Captain Elara Voss took a deep breath, feeling the subtle vibrations of the planet beneath her boots. The Barren Princess was waking, slowly, patiently, beautifully, and humans, she realized, had the power to awaken worlds. Captain Elara Voss awoke to the faint hum of the Barren Princess, vibrating beneath her boots. The planet's energy pulses had grown stronger overnight, synchronized in a rhythm that made the crystalline nodes across the plains glow brighter than she had ever seen. It was as though the planet itself had learned to anticipate her movements, its dormant potential fully engaging with her presence. She felt a quiet thrill. The transformation was accelerating, and she was witnessing something that no other species in the galaxy had ever experienced. She began her day by walking toward the largest crystalline canyon, where the earliest signs of energy synchronization had begun. The glowing nodes pulsed in a complex pattern, almost musical in its precision. Elara knelt beside one of the largest crystals, placing her hand gently on its surface. It vibrated, responding to her warmth and touch, harmonizing with the hum of her own body. For a moment, she felt a profound connection, not just to the planet, but to life itself, in its most subtle and patient form. The sprouts she had nurtured weeks ago had grown taller, stretching toward the light of the planet's weak sun. Tiny leaves glimmered as if infused with the energy from the crystalline network beneath them. Streams of water, once just condensation, now flowed in small rivulets, converging to form tiny ponds. The planet, silent and dormant when she first arrived, was now alive in ways that could no longer be ignored. Ilara's communication devices crackled as an incoming transmission from the Galactic Council arrived. She hesitated before opening it, knowing that skepticism was still rampant across the galaxy. When the message appeared, her eyes widened. Captain Voss. The holographic image of Ambassador Lavar flickered into view. His 4 arms gestured anxiously. Your recent data. It cannot be real. Multiple species have confirmed anomalies on the Barren Princess. Energy readings. Rapid plant growth. Water generation. Are you claiming the planet is awakening? Ilara's lips curved into a quiet smile. It is awakening, she said simply. It has been waiting. I just guided it. The ambassador's tentacles trembled slightly. You mean, this is not an accident? This is intentional? You've communicated with it? Yes, Ilara replied. Through observation, patience, and subtle interaction. The planet responds to understanding, not force. It has intelligence, though not like ours. It learns and adapts. It waited for someone willing to listen. Across the galaxy, whispers of disbelief spread. Species that had once mocked the human envoy now began to debate in quiet tones. Perhaps humans were underestimated in ways far beyond what anyone had imagined. Perhaps their patience, empathy, and intuition traits dismissed as weaknesses were precisely what made them capable of achieving the impossible. Ilara returned her focus to the planet. The transformation was more rapid than she had anticipated. Small groves of luminous plants had begun to spread across the plains, their roots intertwined with the crystalline nodes, drawing energy and stabilizing the ecosystem. Streams converged into small lakes, reflecting the glowing patterns of the crystals above them. The barren landscape she had first seen was now a patchwork of life, slowly reclaiming the planet from its dormant state. As she moved deeper into the plains, she encountered a cluster of nodes that behaved differently. Unlike the synchronized patterns elsewhere, these pulses were erratic, almost chaotic. Ilara studied them, her mind working tirelessly. She realized that these nodes had been damaged long ago, perhaps by some natural event that had caused the planet's dormancy. Their energy was fragmented, and without careful guidance, they could destabilize the system she had begun to create. She knelt beside the chaotic nodes, touching one gently. The pulse vibrated against her hand, irregular and unsteady. She hummed a simple rhythm, matching the vibrations she felt in the earth. Slowly, the pulse began to stabilize, then synchronize with the surrounding nodes. It took hours, but by midday, the chaotic cluster had aligned with the planet's emerging harmony. Ilara documented every detail, knowing that this information would become critical for future understanding. Not only had she discovered how to awaken a dormant planet, but she had learned how to stabilize it, nurture it, and guide it toward sustainable growth. The knowledge was invaluable, and it was uniquely human in origin. Other species had technology, force, and intelligence, but none had the ability to patiently communicate with a living planet in this way. By evening, the planet's transformation was becoming visible even from orbit. The glowing nodes and emerging forests created patterns of light that mirrored constellations in the nearby galaxy. Streams reflected the energy pulses, creating lines of luminescent water that crisscrossed the plains. Tiny creatures, previously dormant in the soil, began to stir, emerging into the new ecosystem. Life, once absent, was now spreading in ways that could no longer be ignored. Ilara sat on a rock, observing. The galaxy had mocked her, doubted her, and dismissed her mission. Yet here she was, proving that humans were capable of far more than anyone had imagined. Her thoughts drifted to Earth, to the people who had taught her resilience, creativity, and patience. Perhaps humanity's greatest strength was not in force or technology, but in the ability to adapt, to observe, and to connect with life in ways others could not. A sudden ripple of energy drew her attention. One of the distant nodes began to pulse in a pattern she had not initiated. She moved closer, her mind racing. The planet was acting on its own, spreading synchronization to regions she had not yet reached. Tiny sprouts of life had begun to emerge in untouched areas, following the patterns of energy as if guided by some internal intelligence. Alara realized with a thrill that the planet was learning, adapting, and expanding its own ecosystem independently. She sent another report to the council, including holographic images of the glowing nodes, spreading forests, and shimmering streams. This time, the response was immediate. Multiple species requested access to her data, eager to witness the unprecedented transformation. The galaxy, once filled with laughter at her mission, was now filled with cautious awe. Humans, long underestimated, were demonstrating their ability to guide and awaken life in ways no other species could. Alara smiled quietly and returned to her work. She focused on the energy nodes, experimenting with sound, light, and movement. Each adjustment produced subtle but measurable changes, creating stronger growth in the plants and more coordinated pulses in the crystals. The planet responded not as a passive environment but as an active participant, learning and adapting to her guidance. Over the following days, the transformation accelerated. Tiny creatures emerged, feeding on the new plant life, and in turn dispersing seeds to other regions. Streams converged into larger bodies of water, reflecting the glowing networks above. The planet's surface, once cracked and lifeless, now shimmered with life and energy. Alara observed the changes with fascination. She had not only awakened the planet but had sparked a self-sustaining ecosystem that would continue to grow independently. Alien observers, who had been monitoring her progress from orbit, began to communicate their astonishment. "This human has achieved what our species could not," one Valerian scientist admitted. "Through patience and subtle interaction, she has awakened a dormant planet. We must study this carefully." Others nodded in agreement, the initial ridicule giving way to cautious admiration. Humans, it seemed, were far more capable than anyone had predicted. Alara reflected on her journey. The Barren Princess had not been a test of technology or strength. It had been a test of understanding, creativity, and patience. She had relied on observation, empathy, and intuition, traits often dismissed as weaknesses to awaken life where none had existed. The galaxy's mockery had underestimated the very qualities that made humans extraordinary. As the sun set over the glowing plains, Alara stood on a hill, watching the patterns of energy and life spread across the landscape. The planet had transformed in ways no one could have imagined. From the cracks in the barren soil, a thriving, interconnected ecosystem had emerged. Streams reflected the shimmering light of crystalline nodes, plants swayed in harmony with the energy pulses, and tiny creatures explored their new home. The Barren Princess, once thought dead, was now a living, breathing world. Alara's heart swelled with pride. The galaxy had mocked her mission, doubted her capabilities, and dismissed her species. Yet she had proven that humans could achieve the impossible. By understanding, connecting, and guiding rather than forcing, she had awakened a planet and created life where none had existed. The transformation was not complete, and challenges remained. Some nodes were still erratic. Some regions of the planet remained dormant. But Alara was undeterred. She had learned the planet's rhythms, its responses, and its needs. She understood that her role was not to dominate, but to guide, to nurture, and to facilitate the planet's growth. She sent her final report for the day, documenting the rapid expansion of life, the synchronization of energy nodes, and the emergence of new ecosystems. Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. The human who had been mocked, sent to a barren world as a joke, had achieved something unprecedented. Species that had once laughed at humanity now whispered in awe, recognizing the quiet power of patience, creativity, and empathy. Alara watched the night sky, the stars reflected in the glowing streams and crystal networks below. She felt a profound connection, not only to the Barren Princess, but to the universe itself. Humans, she realized, were capable of far more than anyone had imagined. They could awaken life, guide dormant systems, and transform the impossible into reality. As she prepared to rest, She whispered to the planet, a promise and a reassurance. "We are just beginning," she said softly. "Together, we will continue to grow. Together, we will awaken the galaxy." For the first time, the Barren Princess felt fully alive. Its energy pulses were steady and harmonious, its ecosystem self-sustaining, and its life spreading in ways no species had expected. And at the center of it all stood a human small, underestimated, but capable of extraordinary feats. The galaxy had mocked her, but soon, they would learn that humans were not to be underestimated. Captain Alara Voss smiled as she watched the glowing patterns of energy pulse in harmony across the plains. The Barren Princess had been transformed, but this was only the beginning. The galaxy would never view humans the same way again. The Barren Princess had transformed beyond anything Captain Alara Voss could have imagined. From a planet once dismissed as lifeless and forgotten, it had become a world of gentle rivers, glowing forests, and tiny creatures exploring the reborn ecosystems. Crystalline nodes pulsed steadily beneath the soil, forming a network of energy that connected every living organism in a delicate balance. Alara walked among the thriving flora, feeling the subtle hum of life beneath her feet, and knew the galaxy was about to see humanity in a way it never had before. Weeks of observation, experimentation, and patient guidance had turned the planet into a living system. Tiny sprouts had grown into strong plants, streams had converged into flowing rivers, and the light of the crystalline nodes had illuminated the entire landscape with a magical glow at night. Life had returned in forms that were both familiar and strange, adapting to the planet's unique conditions. It was a living testament to the patience, creativity, and intuition of humans. Alara climbed to the top of a small ridge to take in the view. The plains stretched out before her, a patchwork of green, gold, and glimmering light. The streams reflected the radiant pulses of energy, and the forests seemed to sway gently in the rhythm of the planet's hum. Small creatures emerged from burrows and trees, exploring new paths and feeding on the reborn flora. The Barren Princess was alive, not just in the physical sense, but in a harmonious symphony of energy and life. She activated her communication array and sent a report to the Galactic Council. The images and data she transmitted were breathtaking. Synchronized pulses of energy, flourishing ecosystems, flowing water, and creatures rediscovering their world. The Council's response was immediate. Species that had once laughed at the mission now scrambled to understand what had been accomplished. Ambassadors, scientists, and explorers flooded her inbox, requesting guidance, schematics, and explanations. One message stood out among the rest. It was from Ambassador Lavar, the very one who had mocked her months ago. His holographic image appeared, tentacles ringing in nervous energy. "Captain Voss," he said cautiously, "the data you have sent. We cannot believe what we are seeing. This planet, it is alive. Entirely alive. The energy nodes, the ecosystems. It is as if the Barren Princess itself has awakened." Alara smiled softly. "It has awakened," she said. "It was waiting for a compatible mind. Someone willing to observe, understand, and connect. It required patience, not force, and empathy, not control. Humans have qualities that others often dismiss, but in situations like this, those qualities are extraordinary." The ambassador was silent for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Indeed, it appears the galaxy has underestimated your species far too long. You have achieved what no other advanced civilization could. Humanity is remarkable." Alara returned her attention to the planet. The transformation was accelerating. The crystalline nodes pulsed with such intensity that light spilled over the plains, creating rivers of glowing energy that intertwined with water and plants. New species of plants and animals began to emerge, seemingly born from the energy of the nodes themselves. Each day, the Barren Princess grew more vibrant, a self-sustaining ecosystem thriving in harmony with the energy network. Despite the rapid changes, Alara noticed that some areas remained dormant, small patches of land where energy pulses were weak and life had not yet emerged. She approached one such region and knelt beside the soil, placing her hand on the ground. Closing her eyes, she focused on the rhythm of the planet, listening to the subtle vibrations beneath her feet. Slowly, a faint pulse began to respond, growing stronger with each breath, harmonizing with the surrounding nodes. Within hours, tiny sprouts emerged, reaching toward the light of the crystalline network. Alara realized that the planet had not only learned from her but had developed the ability to adapt independently. She had initiated the awakening, but now it was self-sustaining. Life would continue to spread and evolve even after she left. The Barren Princess was no longer a test of human skill. It had become a testament to the potential of humanity itself. News of the planet's transformation spread throughout the galaxy like a starburst. Scientific delegations arrived in orbit, observing from a distance as the ecosystem flourished. Species that had once mocked the human mission now marveled at the subtle genius of human patience, intuition, and creativity. Reports described glowing energy rivers, thriving flora, and newly emerged fauna, all functioning in perfect harmony with the planet's energy network. Alara welcomed the visitors, guiding them through the plains and showing them how life had emerged from seemingly lifeless soil. She demonstrated how the crystalline nodes interacted with sound, light, and subtle vibrations, and how her interactions had accelerated the planet's awakening. The aliens watched in awe as plants responded to gentle touch and energy pulses, synchronized across vast distances. The Barren Princess was alive, and the human had played a crucial role in that transformation. One scientist, a slender, blue-skinned being from the aquatic planet Thalassia, spoke softly. "We have studied dormant worlds for centuries," she said, "and none of our technologies could achieve this. Your species, your approach, it is unlike anything we have ever seen. Humans have a way of understanding life that we cannot replicate." Alara nodded. "It is not force or technology that awakens life. It is observation, patience, and connection. You must listen, learn, and work with the system, not try to dominate it. That is what humans can do when others underestimate them." The visitors returned to their ships, sending reports to their home systems. Across the galaxy, the perception of humans began to shift. Where there had been mockery and skepticism, there was now cautious admiration. Species that had doubted humanity now recognized the potential of a small, underestimated species capable of extraordinary achievements. As the Barren Princess continued to thrive, Alara took time to reflect on her own transformation. She had arrived as a cautious, determined captain, aware of her limitations and the galaxy's expectations. She had learned the rhythms of a dormant planet, nurtured life into existence, and guided a complex system into self-sustaining harmony. In the process, she had grown in patience, understanding, and appreciation for the delicate balance of life. Her connection to the planet deepened each day. She could sense energy pulses, feel the subtle vibrations of growth beneath her feet, and even anticipate changes in the ecosystem before they occurred. The planet had become more than a mission. It had become a partner, a teacher, and a reflection of human potential. One evening, as the twin moons of the Barren Princess rose in the sky, Alara watched the glowing rivers and shimmering forests below. The transformation was nearly complete. The energy nodes pulsed with such clarity that the entire landscape glimmered with life. The planet had responded to human patience, creativity, and empathy, becoming a vibrant testament to the species once mocked by the galaxy. Alara sent a final report to the Galactic Council, summarizing the transformation, the synchronization of the energy network, the thriving ecosystems, and the emergence of new species. She concluded with a simple statement: "Humans are capable of awakening life where others see only death. We are patient, observant, and empathetic. We do not dominate, but we understand, connect, and guide." The Barren Princess is proof of what humanity can achieve when underestimated, overlooked, or dismissed. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Messages of congratulations, astonishment, and respect poured in from species across the galaxy. Scientists, diplomats, and explorers acknowledged that humans had achieved what no other species could: awakening a dormant world through understanding and connection. Humanity, once seen as small, fragile, and impulsive, had proven itself capable of extraordinary accomplishments. Alara knew the journey was not over. The Barren Princess would continue to evolve long after she departed. The energy network, now fully synchronized, would sustain life across the planet, adapting to changes and nurturing ecosystems. The humans' work had been the catalyst, but the planet would continue its own growth, a living legacy of her species' ingenuity. As she prepared to leave, she took one last walk across the glowing plains. Streams reflected the radiant energy. Plants swayed gently, and creatures explored their new home. The planet hummed beneath her feet, a rhythm of life she had helped awaken. She smiled, knowing that the galaxy's perception of humans had forever changed. The journey back to the Galactic hub was filled with anticipation. Reports of the Barren Princess had already spread, and Alara expected the Council and other species to welcome her with a mixture of admiration and curiosity. She reflected on the lessons she had learned. Patience, observation, empathy, and creativity were as powerful as technology or force. Humans had been underestimated, but now the galaxy could no longer ignore them. When she arrived, the reception was extraordinary. Representatives from dozens of species lined the council chambers, eager to hear her account. Screens displayed images of the glowing plains, thriving forests, and synchronized energy nodes. Scientists, diplomats, and explorers listened intently as Alara described her methods, the planet's responses, and the subtle interactions that had awakened life. Ambassador Lavar stepped forward, his tentacles folded respectfully. "Captain Voss," he said, "you have achieved the impossible. The Barren Princess has awakened under your guidance, and in doing so, you have shown us the true potential of humanity. We underestimated your species for far too long. Humanity is remarkable." Alara nodded quietly. "We are not perfect," she replied. "But we can observe, understand, and connect. We can awaken life where others see only emptiness. That is what makes humans capable of extraordinary things." The galaxy would remember the Barren Princess as the planet that was once mocked and forgotten, now alive and thriving because a human had dared to listen and guide. Captain Alara Voss had not only transformed a world but had transformed the perception of her species. Humans were no longer fragile or insignificant. They were capable, patient, and extraordinary. As she stood in the council chamber, Alara looked out at the gathered species and realized that this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, full of dormant worlds, challenges, and opportunities. If humans could awaken the Barren Princess, what else could they achieve? She felt a surge of determination, knowing that the future was filled with possibilities beyond imagination. The Barren Princess hummed quietly beneath her mind, its energy network now fully awake, its ecosystems thriving, and its life flourishing. The galaxy had mocked the humans sent to the barren world, but she had returned, transformed, leaving a living testament to what humanity could achieve when underestimated, overlooked, and dismissed. Captain Alara Voss smiled, her heart full of quiet pride. The galaxy would never underestimate humans again. They had awakened a planet. They had proven their ingenuity, patience, and empathy. And this was only the beginning. The stars outside the council chamber glittered like the crystalline nodes of the Barren Princess. A reminder that life, no matter how dormant or overlooked, could be awakened with understanding, patience, and a human touch. And Captain Alara Voss, once laughed at, had become the catalyst for a legacy that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. The journey of the Barren Princess had ended, but the story of humanity was just beginning.